Damon, I also have your bar muscle up video. I don't remember. I think that might have been one of the videos I had some trouble with though. So if we don't get to it today, we'll get to it next week. Occasionally they come up crooked and I have to go like reformat them. All right, let's start off with this. All right, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background here. Um, there's a little bit of movement that I want to see him do better on this, but I want you guys to like kind of put your programming coaching hats on and like think about why would I make him do this drill. So he's about to do a clean pull, but if you notice the band, he's got the band around the barbell and the band's going to like a rig. So that band, and he's got a pretty aggressive band on there too. Like I don't even think he need to use that much. So he's really got to work. Yeah. But why would I have this tactile cue and program this as a drill? So I'm going to play a couple reps and then we'll talk about it. We'll talk about his movement after. So doing this drill, why might you guys program that for yourself or program that for an athlete? Like, what do you think he was doing when he was cleaning that I was like, all right.
He wasn't keeping the bar close enough.
Yeah, he wasn't. Well, yes, and I'm going to give you some further context. So he was keeping the bar close in the sense of he was shaving his shins and he was shaving his thighs, and then when you would get to like the top of the hip crease, the bar would get away from him, and it would get away in that like that region where you really want it to brush, and especially in the triple extension. Now, giving him the cue to keep it close, and you can tell that he's very, very focused on keeping it close, but the bar is still creeping away no matter how hard he tried. Another side effect of that happening is he would do a clean or he'll do a snatch and he'll have this jump forward. And when you look at the bar path, you go, the bar path is pretty close. Like he's not reverse curling and he's still jumping forward and he's still missing that gap on the thigh. So what is happening that's contributing to that gap, especially as the load increases, and it's contributing to that jump forward, especially as the load increases?
He's not fully extending then. Like when
he was jumping. He's hitting triple extension. He's just got a gap between his body and the barbell at the hip. We cue our athletes this all the time.
Nate, we explained this gap between his hip and the bar is, I'm sorry, Gina, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. The gap is when like post strike with the thigh, or just before the strike?
So it's in the top of the second pull. So like as he's finishing and he's jumping, that last like 2 inches, that bar is getting away from his upper thigh, upper hip. So it's in the very last part of his pull, before he starts to pull his body under, like when he's hitting his triple extension.
Then he's probably, instead of jumping up, he's giving the bar a baby. And that's why it's going out?
Initially he was, but that's not why I put the band here. Gina, what were you going to say?
Losing activation in the scap, like at the last.
Yes.
Lats. Yeah.
That's his issue. Yeah, he gets into this great position. Everything gets really tight. We cue our athletes all the time there. And then how many times have you guys been coaching where it's like they get there and then they start moving and everything relaxes again? So sometimes the issue with bar path is not because, they're just not close or they're, hitting the bar out with their hips, but it's because their lats are soft and those shoulders have gone from down and back to just relaxing a little bit. And as the load progresses, it gets away from this because we don't have that tension now actively pulling it back. So I banded this because it's going to force him to stay strong this entire time. If you see, like, he's moving slow, but in his entire liftoff, do those shoulders ever change? No. They look like from when he gets his engagement and starts his movement, they don't have any budget. That's what we want in movement. Now, when the load increases, it gets harder to hold that. So that's why I love doing like halting pulls and just things like that and lift offs because it spends more time under tension with the lats backing down. Part of the reason I'm doing that is for that, right? We can be super successful up to 95%, hit every single lift with no issue, and then we can't PR because that snatch is getting this much away from our body because of a lack of tension that's going on up here, and then we're wobbling, we're not in position. So any of your athletes that you see that have a really hard time with that, and Jason's very engaged, he gets extra programming. I'm not going to give this to just my everyday person coming to class because they're not going to take the time to set this up and do it properly. But those people that are hungry, or for yourselves, I love doing this as a warm up. I love doing this as like a post lifting session accessory. It really makes you engage. And if you're unsure if you're good at engaging, do it. And the band don't lie. You're going to know pretty quickly with that.
I've never done this movement before, this training tool. What percentage of the barbell weight would you recommend?
I would go mostly off mechanics here. So at what point can we like maximize our good movement versus when the movement's going to start to break down? Ideally, I would like to get really heavy here because the heavier we get, this is going to bring me to like my next little segue with this actual movement. We're also going to have the point where the band is pulling us, but now the bar is pulling us. So really teaches athletes how to keep centered and keep the bar going in the direction we need to go and not letting the bar pull us. But I mean, you'll see clean pulls up to 105, 110% of your clean sometimes. That's without a band. But I would say don't get shy. If movement's going well, what's the worst case that's going to happen? If mechanically we're hitting positions, we're also just going to get stronger too. But put mechanics first as far as figuring it out. If you've never done it, put 95 pounds on the barbell and just worry about position to start. All right, there's something I want you guys to pay attention for. He does a phenomenal job at why I gave him this, right? And he gets these shoulders back and down. He doesn't lose it at all. I want you to try to find what the issue is and why he's still going to jump forward with the cleans. You guys got anything?
I see when he's starting off from the first pull that his weight shifts towards his toes, and then also it looks like his shoulders are rising a little bit quicker than his hips, but that's kind of slight. Right there.
Hips do teeter a hair faster. Not overly concerned with that for now. That could become an issue definitely like down the road. So it's something to pay attention to. I would be more concerned and triage the first thing you said with the feet. Watch his feet on this first rep. First rep's the biggest one for him on this one. You see how that shift just happens? Like he gets tension. He's going to start his pull, and there's this little lean forward, and now everything is forward. And if you stop this position and you cut his feet out the picture, you're like, oh, this looks awesome, but it's not. Because when he actually does clean and he goes to extend, now that bar is going to yank him forward, and the rest of the entire lift is going to be, he's going to chase it out of the bottom of it, or he's going to look like a Ninja Turtle getting out of the bottom of it. So I bring this point up, not because this weight is, well, he's at 185. This is probably like his body weight. But especially when we start to get close to body weight and over body weight, he should get into position here and kind of over exaggerate a lean sit back. Because remember, he's holding onto the bar. He's not going to fall on his butt. And now he's fighting the barbell into him. So anytime we're cleaning, snatching, think about getting it shifted into you as you're lifting off and going. If you don't, it pulls us forward, and then the rest of the lift just starts to fall apart from there. If we lose the foundation of the lift in the first pull, so from this, mid shin to right above the knee, if that falls apart, that's like the foundation of our house falling apart. Doesn't matter how nice the bathrooms and kitchen is. If the foundation is ruined, the house is essentially nothing different there in Olympic weightlifting. That was a good catch, Katie. I see this happen the most with women, especially at bodyweight. You control the bar, don't let it control you. Any other things you want to throw on with Jason's Bandit Clean Pull before we move on? Or questions maybe?
So I know this is not the focus, but when he's coming down, like I'm just not sure if he does this usually when he's, cycling. He needs to do a little bit more of a good
Yeah,
morning.
his line of action, he squats before he comes down, and that also may, I don't know the answer to that. That also just may be very directly correlated to the fact that he has a band. I think that green band is probably up to 120 pounds of pressure potentially at its top. So it just may be purely so he doesn't get yoked.
Yeah.
That I don't know, but it would be something for sure in his deadlift cycling to look at. And I'm gonna clip this and send it to him to make sure that when he goes down, but goes back, more of a good morning and not a squat. That is a good catch. That's the old like, mama told you lift with your legs and not your back. So everybody is putting a deadlift down on the ground. They try to squat it down versus actually hinge it down.
Yeah.
I think it's very common. All right, since we're on Oli, let's stick with Oli and then we'll have some good gymnastics to do today. All right, so this was Gina first. Congrats on the PR. Hell yeah.
Whee!
And then, these apps are some of like my own personal, like most favorite entertaining things to look at on Instagram because they're cool and you can definitely analyze and fix things. But I think a lot of people miss some stuff. So I just want to talk about that and we'll see if like Gina actually does it here of where my head is. Let's watch her lift first. Welcome with our next job for PR. This is also a fun video because we're gonna analyze what does Gina need as an athlete looking at this movement as well when it comes to like Olympic weightlifting. So let's talk about this bar path streak real quick. And hers is actually pretty good with maybe just a slight deviation that could be a little better. So I see these all the time where someone's snatching, right? And let's drag in slow-mo as I talk. And this first little bit, see how this bar line is like in a sweeping motion in toward her body, right? And the bar is maybe not against her shins, which you don't have to start with, but as long as it gets pulled back and swept back, that's what I'm talking about in that video about Jason. You see how this bar takes off and it gets pulled like into her body and that curve goes toward her. We want to see that. Now, when we're looking at this line, that curve should slightly go into the athlete's body. And now that curve should just remain directly straight up from there, right? So now at this point where she's about to extend, that line should just continue straight. And then we just need maybe this tiny little hook at the top, like where the turnover is. What happens is you see how the line is here. I know it's a little hard to see, but then it kind of slightly bows back out. That's the area that we want to avoid. So I think in her case, she's being really aggressive. It's PR. The hips slightly bump the bar back out. Now she does a good job at keeping it close to where it doesn't make her fail the lift. But you see when the hip contact happens, that she goes straight up and her body's behind. She's working around the bar rather than the bar kind of like swooping back out a little bit and working the opposite direction. You guys see what I'm talking about there? Now that it's lime green, you can kind of see it. Like, so great job in the takeoff, swoops in. From there, it should just go straight up, and we just get this little deviation of a bump out. You can see that really well sometimes when people, even though they have a really good hip thrust and they don't lose the bar path from a hip bump and bumping it out, but they lose the bar path from a flipping turnover. So sometimes on these apps, you'll see it's like this beautiful, so it's all green. You'll see it's this beautiful path where it swoops in, it makes contact with the hips, and then it goes straight up. And then all of a sudden, right in the finish, it has this little bump up top, out and around. And then it can cue you off as that person flicking the bar out and around and turn over their snatch or not. This app and this profile view is a really good tool for that because I think that takes some coach's eye to develop a flicky turnover vision versus like a non. Does all that bar path stuff make sense? Cool. So from Jason's video where you see him get rocked forward and the bar pulls him, his line would probably look like a little straight. Instead of being hooked in, it would just go kind of straight. And now when we're talking with load, it pulls him forward because it's not over exaggerated and pulled back like Gina does here. All right, let's look, see if there's any, besides that very slight deviation, which I think in real time is going to be more of a good job. Let's act like it's not a 1 rep max, because it's for sure a high five moment only. If it wasn't, is there anything you guys would change? I don't really think there is either. I think she did a great job. Hips and shoulders rise together, still over the bar above the knee. She scoops pretty well into that second pull, like she's starting to get vertical. It's a really nice triple extension. I think the receive position, I mean, I've got no complaints there at all. And then she does something else really, really good as well. She comes out of the whole shoulders first, so she keeps her posture getting out of the bottom. Now, especially for a PR, this is for sure a high five moment. Nothing I would cue and coach here. Besides maybe on your next attempt, have the patience like you did in this one. So it's like she lands it, there's a second, she finds balance and then moves. Continue to have that patience because she's going to need it if she goes to hit 145, and then continuing to just shoulders first. Just that thought process, even though she does it well here, will just reinforce what she was going to need to do to have like a double PR day, for example. As a coach, what would you prescribe Gina, you know, to PR her snatch again? Like, let's say we're going to train for 8 weeks. Where do you feel she has a weak point? Gina, you can answer this as well if you want to.
I would say like drop snatches or something, and like maybe overhead squats, because I think that was where I had that deviation, especially the stand up. But I haven't been working on snatches, so I was kind of surprised to get a PR.
Big win. And that's, you know, that statement, that is what we talked about on Tuesday when we talk about, you know, conjugate method and what CrossFit is. And it's constantly varied, and it's constantly varied to have the maximum general physical preparedness of everything at all times. That's the magic of CrossFit. People think my snatch can't get better because I haven't done a snatch cycle. And that is not true. If you're doing programming, you can PR things without doing cycles on them. And I think it's just a big misinterpretation. So this is a good example of that. Overhead squats for sure. I like drop snatch, snatch balance, more of like a snatch balance than a drop snatch, because I think drop snatch you're going so quick that you'll be limited on load. And if I look at her bottom position here, like she pauses and it's heavy, but she looks fairly comfortable. So it doesn't look like she's psychologically getting fucked by, you know, being in the bottom of an overhead squat here. And it doesn't look like she's having any issues with comfort. The issue is more on the stand up, right? So she goes to stand and it's a dog fight, especially a parallel. So when we say, what can we train? Overhead squats, absolutely, right? And really thinking about position and mechanics. But I think if her quads get stronger, that stand up becomes a lot easier as well. And it doesn't become as wonky, and it becomes easier to stay upright versus yours truly. I'm more posterior chain dominant. So when I go to stand up, the first thing I want to do is more glutes and hamstrings, and I want to teeter and I want to go forward. So I think just quad strength by itself would be a game changer on something like this. The shoulders also look very strong, even though you're fighting through that squat. And I think that's a side effect of all the ring dip work, the muscle up work, all of the handstand push-up negatives. Like you're seeing a translation into all of that work into your snatch as well here. So nice job.
Are way stronger. But
Yeah,
and I think I would have gone up in weight, but we ran out of time, so it was only 12 minutes.
Yeah, I think I would have PR'd that day too. We ran out too. I snuck an extra 3 minutes for my gym though. We cut the Metcon back and changed it. I was like, we're
Yeah.
snatching today. This is for me. I'm extending time. I won't repeat that to anybody at my gym now. It was for me though. Gina, nice job here. Does all that like side work, side training stuff make sense? And does it make sense on why I'm saying the quads would be the big one here? Right, especially in parallel, right? Box squats, front box squats would be a great thing. And then just I would probably put the box right at like that depth. So like a half inch maybe below parallel. Get there, hold it, kill your momentum, and then have to get out of a dead stop in your weak point. And they'll look exactly like this. It's like you're not gonna move, you're not gonna move, you're not gonna move, you're gonna rock it out, and it's gonna get really easy. All right, let's change gears. Let's go to a gymnastic. Oh, you lucked out. I tried to put your gymnastic on and it's not here. No worry, we'll get it on. Let's go to, I have Gina's muscle up though. She's having a good week. It's like back to back good days. So I don't have a lot to say on this, besides keep doing what you are doing, because I think that drill really paid off. But I have one small comment that I don't think we have to spend a ton of time on. And I'd see if you guys pick it up. If you could change something, what would you change? It's very simple. Watch the legs.
Yeah, I would say just keep the tension on the legs on
Yeah.
that arch.
So I think that, I mean, the buckle, I'm not in love with, but I think from right now, a lot of things are going right. So I can be willing to selectively ignore the knee break there and like the scorpion because things are going right. Like you made a massive jump of going banded, missing them to now hitting back to back in a Metcon with no misses. That's huge. So obviously you're getting better. So I would like to take that out eventually, but for now wouldn't be my first thing. Watch the legs on the way forward.
Yeah. The feet come apart. Yeah.
They kind of just relax, right? And it's like you have all this tension and build up, and then it's like it's time to go, and then they get to here, and your legs are like, okay, we're done, and go ahead, upper body, finish it. I think if you just get more aggressive and you kind of think I'm going to keep them tight and try to kick them or knee them all the way through, I think you'll make your muscle up even easier. So just have that, I think, max tension. I don't want to say max tension. Have that max effort with them the whole time. And that's for any of you guys. Like I was gonna pair this video with Deanna's video, and she's doing a pull-up complex where she's doing back and forth, one kipping pull-up and one chest to bar pull-up, and I programmed that for body control. But you can see in her kipping pull-up, it's this real soft motion and it's calm especially with the body, and positions are good, but it's relaxed. And then she goes chest to bar, and you see how aggressive all of a sudden everything gets. Right. And it goes from calm to aggressive, calm to aggressive. And the reason I bring that point up is, yeah, Gina hits you back to back muscle ups. We love that. And yeah, Deanna did her whole complex unbroken. We love that. But what if I was making Gina do 4 muscle ups? And what if I was making Deanna do 10 reps instead of 5 reps? Like that starts to become a big difference. So when you guys are doing your gymnastics, don't just go through the motion. Make the most of what you can on every rep, because you'll take your normal 10 unbroken pull-ups where you normally fatigue out at 8, 9, 10 and have to take a break. And because you've had this big effort on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, your unbroken 10 now becomes an unbroken 15 because you moved more efficient from the start all the way through. You see it all the time on push press. People do this little relaxing dip, right? And thrusters, same thing. This little relaxing like dip through, and they're moving fine. Mechanically is okay. Their timing may be okay. And then they start to get tired and they start to struggle. And they start to extend hard because their shoulders are burning out. Why wait till rep 25 to do that? Do that on rep 1. Save your shoulders. Go bigger sets. Be less fatigued. Go faster last round. Okay, so like both you girls on those gymnastics videos, I'll put that next week. Really good job with positioning, and I'm very happy with both of them. but don't waste any when you got more Just like we would manhandle a barbell, manhandle or woman handle through gymnastics as well. All right, terrible video quality. It's like Android. No offense to my Android people. I think you just didn't wipe it or chalk on it. All right, so this is our 1 rep max snatch day. And for a little reference, this is Nolan at my gym. And when it comes to all out raw strength, he could run circles around me, right? But I'll tell us his face is smoked him on the snatch. So let's address, like, we know he's got the physical skills to put up a very large number here. Let's try to address why that's not happening. What does that lift just like, before we even say anything like mechanically, what does that lift just kind of like look like to you? You guys know when we have like a new person that comes to the gym and it's squat snatch day, and you know, they kind of throw the bar up, they get their feet in place, and they're real careful, and it's almost like they want to ease down into it, and they just don't have the 100% confidence yet to receive it in the bottom of the squat. Even though he's been doing CrossFit for a little bit, I think there's still a little bit in the brain that he's like, I'm going to be a little careful here. And I think part of that is part of this issue that he's having, right? He makes extension, but like, he's real ginger and careful with receive, and like, he doesn't write it down, but he's very close to almost writing it down. Like, the bar is enough for him to power this, and he can stand up without a squat for sure.
His
So
takeoff is pretty good though. I mean,
yeah,
from-
like his movement is good. Let's look at that real quick. I like his position, right? His hips are lower than his shoulders, but his shoulders definitely in front of the bar. Hips and shoulders go together. It's still over. Love the scoop of the second pull. And like, we look at his extension, like the extension's there, but I definitely think he could extend more aggressively. Just for reference, like, we had the burpee broad jumps, like Mayhem likes to program those after some things. And like, he can clear two mats, which is 8 feet, like, in his sleep. And I'm like low key struggle busting to just get into the second mat. And I have a good explosion in my Oli. And he's doubling what I'm doing. And we'll like casually do box jumps in a workout at 40 inches. So his vertical and his explosiveness is through the roof. And you watch this through, even though he triple extends, I think he's got a lot more power than he can get. Like, he could catch this 205 in a high power position. So you can tell he's like pulling back on the gears a little bit there because of the comfort. What would you program him to help this? I feel like this is a Gina question. She's programmed it for herself.
I mean, you just described me, this whole guy. I have no confidence at the bottom, which is why I've been programming for myself those squat isometric holds at the bottom.
Which yeah, for sure. I think just a straight up squat, if someone has any kind of like hip limitation, hip, ankle, knee, like mobility issues, like, we get that lower system really, really opened up and stuff like that. So I love that. I think that could definitely be a part of it. In his case, and probably in your case too, it's not necessarily the bottom of a squat that's an issue. It's the bottom of the squat while holding a barbell over the head that's probably more of the issue. So like overhead squats, but not just overhead squats with a pause. Like, make him overhead squat and stop here, and like, not for a second, like 1,000, 2 1,000, like 5, 5, 6. Like, make him get real comfortable with being uncomfortable in this position. And I would prescribe it light. Like, it doesn't need to be a lot of weight. Like, it can be 75 pounds for him to start, even though his 1 rep max all-time back squat's 400. But we just need to start to get him feeling confident in this spot and knowing everything's going to be okay. And then what would a cycle like that be, what would be really good to do in a cycle like that?
Drop snatch.
Oh, yeah, drop snatches can be really good. Snatch balance can be really good. Both of those would definitely be stuff I give him. What's another one that's even harder? We don't do them very often. Tall snatches. You guys know what a tall snatch is, where you like stand up and tippy toe and you're here and then you've got to get under. And the way I would do that is we talked about Tuesday, a linear progression. This is the case that would be really good. So I would start him off on maybe week 1 through 4 with just pause overhead squats, building a lot of comfort in the bottom. Through those weeks, slowly increasing loads. So we're building that, and I would probably give him a pause prescription of like, a 5-second in the bottom with maybe like an 8-second standing tall overhead, because I'll also just look, why not just get his shoulder stronger and shoulder stability going more too. And then from there, I would program in snatch balance. He's got like a dip and drive, and he's gonna like almost do more of a heaving snatch balance, just kind of receive it and ride it down. I call those heaving snatch balances when you receive and write it down. And then I would go to a snatch balance where he does not receive it and write it down. He gives some drives, but he catches and receives in the bottom, and we're putting speed with that. Then finally, I would go to what Gina said with the drop snatch. You guys know what drop snatches are? So when the bar's on your back, there's no dip and drive. You got to punch yourself under. I would go to drop snatch, and then I would go to like a tall snatch. So it goes the easiest bottom position. And we're not only programming linear progression in load, we're also programming a linear progression in complexity as he gains more comfort. So when we talk about the stuff that we talked about on Tuesday and some of those progressions can be complexity as well as load and all the other stuff we talked about. I would put one more thing in that cycle for him. We definitely talked about it on this call. Because this could be an issue because he's nervous. It could be an issue because he's also just not doing it well. What do you guys think? One more time, and I'll give you a hint.
Well, he isn't like he doesn't really have active shoulders at the bottom, I think.
You're on the right track. Yes. He doesn't. Yes. What's going with that now? He's very gentle. It's real flicky. He kind of gets it where it needs to go. And then you're 100% right. He's not super active, right? He's just kind of there, which I think in part could be the confidence, in part could be something he just needs to also train and work on. So I'd program him muscle snatches. I would program specifically muscle snatches with the tactile cue to where if he flips around as well, he's going to hit the ribs. So whether that's a confidence issue in receiving in the bottom, or it's a, just repetition kind of like habit issue now, you're right. We should also address the shoulders and the punch through for this.
But also like the drop snatches, or is that what it's called? Drop snatch? Those wouldn't that help with being active?
100%. Yeah, the drop snatch, really all of them.
Yeah.
But from the pause overhead squat to the heaving snatch balance to the snatch balance to the drop snatch to the tall snatch,
Yeah.
His aggressiveness and need to be aggressive is also going to build through that as well. But I would still put in those muscle snatches because now
being flicky anyways, yeah.
Yeah, and when we look at something like the tall snatch, if I have him really hone down his muscle snatch, that's also going to help the tall snatch. That's like the thing about Olympic weightlifting is we do get all these little translations, even though we're working on a section, they're going to help other things as well. And that is our goal, right? To bring them all together into this single movement. But like pay attention to that sometimes with your athletes, that I'm 100% today going to cue him to get more aggressive, especially in his punch. That's probably where I'm going to go like on this, but like pay attention to, and he doesn't look super excited to land in the hole on this snatch. Versus I'll share a fail that I did on the same day. I forgot to upload it. When we look at that next week, I'll kind of refer back to Nolan here and then look at me, and you can see the difference in like YOLO, I don't care. I'm gonna get down there. Like that bar is going to get above my head and I'm gonna give myself the best shot. And you'll just see like the speed and like willingness to get there and like that difference. Because that difference is gonna make you succeed or not succeed, you know, especially in a snatch. And then Justin, that was all the things you're doing with the pauses and stuff, keep doing them and add in any of those other skills, you know, in that order as well. And see if you can get even more comfortable. Cleans are a little tougher, because I know people are a little more like hesitant to get under a clean, but you can't really do a snatch balance with a clean. Like if you try to shuffle your feet and drop, the bar would probably smash you and it wouldn't be good. So all you really have is like pause front squats. I would say receive position holds, and like tall cleans to work that side of it.
I did some,
You do
Nick,
all-
just earlier this week, I did some like bottom up squat, front squats. So I had the bar at the bottom of my squat, like positioned on the rack.
Those are great.
Up. Dude, that kicked my ass. That was so
They're
tough.
hard. They're hard. If you ever want to get more creative, they call them. Some people call them Anderson front squats. And other people just say like, I think bottoms up front squat or something like that. It doesn't matter what you call them, but you can make that a little more exciting. And what'd you do it off of? Did you do it off the rig or do you have blocks at your gym?
Rig.
Okay. Do you have blocks? No, that makes it way harder. You can do these front squats and you can run a band over the barbell and you can make them banded from the bottom. And you want to talk about core strength and maintaining position. They're real deal with that. You get really strong out of the hole. And then you tempo back down with the band and you get to the bottom and then you relax. Just if you want to make your life a little more miserable, which I know you're in for when it comes to fitness. Justin. Heavy front squat. This was a PR too?
Oh yeah, that's PR.
Nice. Hell yeah. Look at full PR.
Gina was coaching that day. Good props to Gina for that, I guess.
I think coach gets like a percent of credit when people start PRing, right? You know, let me rephrase that statement. The coach does get some credit. The athlete for sure gets the majority of credit, but just thinking back to some of the classes we had this week and some of the feedback I got from members about how other coaches conducted their classes. And you, as a coach, you can for sure stage somebody to be as successful as possible. And you can also hinder somebody to take away from that success, depending on how you run things. So the coach does for sure gets credit. So good shout out, Justin. So for a 1 rep max PR effort, I think this is a pretty nice effort, right? We've definitely seen some, a lot more nasty things happen when it comes to 1 rep max attempts. A couple things I really like. He does a really good job with keeping the shoulders behind the toes in the bar path, especially on the descent. And then a good job fighting that on the ascent. Like even though you do want to get tilted over, right? You can tell there's more of an effort than just the elbows, that there's an effort on actually trying to keep them up. So I think really, really nice job with that there. What would we maybe give? And it could be, you know, just extra stuff for Justin to work on. And obviously his knees, he's trying to drive those out, right? You
Yeah.
can see it, and those are also a dogfight. So let's say Justin's like, I'm gonna try to PR in 8 weeks. Yeah. What do you guys want to prescribe for him? Obviously squatting. So that's a given.
I think like very slightly, he almost initiates with his knees instead of, because I know you don't want to bring your hips like so far back in the front squat because it'll just tilt forward. I almost feel like he is, or at least he initiates
It's-
maybe both at the same time. There's just something there, I feel like.
It's very close.
Yeah.
And you're right, like on the front squat, I think the front squat is the hardest one to watch line of action on
Yeah.
because one, like, it's very slight that it needs to happen, but then two, you get like some jerks that know better than you, and they're like, dude, but I'm gonna tilt over. And then when they do what you ask them to do, but they over exaggerate, they make it egregious and go see, and they're doing it on purpose. Like I've had people do that to me. And then I have to I get to be an asshole and you've given me the green light for it. So then I get to manipulate you more. I think in Justin's case, I think you are right, but I would say it's the most minimal adjustment. It's such a fine line with what he's doing here.
Yeah, like I don't think that will make him PR. Like just him bringing his hips further back or first back and then down. I don't think that will affect.
And in this case today, no, I don't think,
No.
not on this one. I think if he got to the bottom, or like you see it a lot like in this zone right here. If you saw all of his weight start to shift forward, then we know line of action negatively affected
Yeah.
him. So I do think you're right, but I mean, I think we're on the same page of it would be the slightest different, right? But when we say we're trying to move virtuous, we do want to pay attention to the slightest things too. But in class, I probably don't even catch that. Like someone else is probably doing something, and in his case, I'm probably more up here in the fight and trying to continue feedback and encouragement on that. So good catch, but I agree with you. It'd be very small. So looking at this front squat, kind of like we did with Gina in the overhead squat, what would you think some good things would be for him to get more load on the bar here? And like obviously squatting, right? Obviously getting the legs stronger. What else? Go ahead, Dee.
I wonder how many fingers do you have on the bar?
Looks like 2.
Yeah, it looks like
Yeah,
it's 2 or 3.
Yeah, okay. Well, never mind.
Yeah, he's
It
there.
helps get a better front rack position.
Yeah, which technically, like actual verbiage from level 1, it is a loose 2-finger grip.
Yeah.
And the reason they went with 2 is because most people can't get the elbows high enough to have 3 and 4 on there. That being said, if let's say Justin did have an amazing front rack and it was easy, I would like to see more fingers. But I'm okay with 2 as long as the elbows are up there and the bars on the shoulders.
I wasn't sure if he had like 3, and then I was gonna say take 1 off.
To get it even more.
Yeah.
Yeah, head's in a good spot there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
But whether it's 2 or 3, like you can go down to 2. All right, what would you guys prescribe?
All right. So I got, it's not so much a prescription, it's more of a question.
Go ahead.
So my initial thought would be, I need to strengthen my outer glutes because that's going to, in my thought process, helps the knees stay out. And with the knees out, utilizing more of the glutes, potentially PRs can happen. But then I look at all these games athletes, I look at Tia Toomey, I look at Brooke Wells, and their knees are always caving in. And I'm like, is it really that important for my glute meat to get really strong? Or is it, this is just in my mind?
I'm with you on that would be part of what we do, right? Because I think at any point in time, if you say, is it going to help me is getting stronger going to help me actually get stronger? Doesn't that sound like a dumb statement? Right? So getting stronger is a good thing no matter where it's going to be, right? I would work on those glute meats too. The other thing that we're not going to see and no one's ever going to know is when Tia-Clair Toomey's 65 years old, what shape is she going to be in, right? So there's a lot of data out there that says a valgus knee doesn't negatively affect the knees. Now, when we think about how the knee joint actually moves, it's a hinge joint and it's supposed to be very in line, and that's how it's supposed to hinge, right? When people tear ligaments, it's oftentimes in a lateral movement, not even under load, and it's just the knee moves in a wrong way and a ligament tears. So in her case, in Brooke Wells' cases, we'll maybe never know the answer to this unless they get real passionate about it and want to let us know of what their long-term knee health is. And I think that's the question that we don't know yet when there's been studies done is like, what is it going to be in 30 years of somebody squatting with some shear force with a valgus knee? So I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know that anybody like fully does yet. What I will say is, yeah, they squat a lot of weight, but can you imagine a power lifter going for 1,000-pound squat doing that? The knee's going to explode. So like there is going to be a point in time that it's not going to be able to hold on, even though our ligaments are strong and they can hold on for a lot of force. I don't know if that totally answers your question on that or not. You know,
But
we
at least
address.
you have the effort, like, it's clear that you're trying to push those knees
Oh.
out.
It's very clear that the effort's there, which I love. When we talk about like, you know, getting the glute med stronger and the glute stronger in general, like also what's that going to translate to? Our hinge motions. So it's not just about, you know, necessarily trying to get a bigger squat without a valgus knee and getting more glute activation. It's going to translate into those other movements too. And then when we talk about long-term health, we know a lot of people run into knee issues because the quad is overworking. It basically just wears down that patella tendon and that whole region because the hips and the glutes aren't doing their job. So at worst case scenario, you get a little stronger and you get your glutes really fired up and you know they're activating on workouts. You know what I mean? I would though, instead of just like banded side shuffles and like banded work, I would get a little more creative and try to get a little more intensity with what's happening there. And I would maybe do like curtsy lunges. You know, those lunges where you send the other leg like back and across. You see it a lot in like booty workouts that the girls do. I would do those, and I would also do like some of those like plank stars, the side plank stars, and I would do holds. So I would get in that position. I'll send a video too for like a full version and a scaled version, and I would just do 20, 30-second holds there. I got exposed to those. Pistols can be good because you can see the knee getting wobbly, potentially. I'm gonna come back to pistols in a second because I'm gonna come back to single leg work. I got exposed to this like side plank start at the games last year in a warm up, and my hips were sore for like 7 days. And I'm like, I did 3 sets of 20 seconds on each side. And when I say like it was the weirdest soreness I've ever had, and I think it's because those muscles that I hit and why I struggled were things that were not working, and I had no idea they weren't working. The other thing, my other thought would be some single leg work, right? I don't know. I know you as an athlete some, but I don't know you fully. Just potentially having a focus, you know, with the single and then like unilateral work can be very beneficial here too. So like pistols would be a thing. It doesn't have to be a full pistol. I really like box squat pistols because I think it's a lot safer for people. And you can maintain position a lot better, and you can also work your weak point on where you're at. Box step ups obviously are a good one. You just got to be careful you're not like jumping off that bottom leg and like assisting too much. And then the last thing, well, I got one more thing to Dustin. What would the last thing be that I think would put him over the top on this?
Maybe some core work, like some L-sits or something.
Core work. And what I mean by core work is what you just said, holds, core holds. So L-sits, in this case, if you were going to go with an L-sit, I really like them on parallettes, and I really like them in the position that are also going to work with triceps, because we'll gain more upper body stability. In a front rack hold is upper body stability and shoulder stability as well. I'll see if I can find a video because there's a couple ways you can do them on the parallettes to get more upper body and another way to get out of it. So I'll see if I can find a reference to that. But yeah, L-sits would be great.
Front rack
I think
holds.
yeah, front rack holds would probably be my next one. And also like front rack holds in the bottom of the squat. So like a 3x3 with like a 7-second bottom hold, a 15-second top hold. You're doing a minute front rack hold and you're getting some squats in, and you're having to fight bottom position, with tension too. One of the best squat cycles I've ever done is a squat cycle based on those long holds. But I think if the core, number one, the core obviously is going to be squatting, but the core being number one, I think the glute work being number two, I think those two things would help really like jump that. And then for Justin's case, like not related to this one front squat that he has here, but like he just told us he doesn't like receiving in the bottom of Olympic lifts. A pause front squat cycle is gonna also build confidence and comfort in the bottom and go with what he's already doing in those, isometric holds. I think the funnest part of what the movement is also dissecting why things are happening, right? If we can find root causes to not only mechanical issues, but root causes to maybe strength issues and stuff like that, that's when we really can take an athlete or ourselves and put them on this like path to being really fit. We're about to watch the CrossFit Games in a month, right? That's what all of these coaches will do. It's not just failing a front squat, it's why are we failing the front squat? And it takes time.
Mhm.
Let's see if we can, let's try this one more. I know what I would start with, and I would focus on one thing. So whatever you guys want to cue on it, one thing.
The setup? Like,
I would start there.
yeah,
I would start there, but I would let it grow into something else.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff wrong. So my first thought is always safety. So that lower back, because there's a
Setup,
round to it,
right.
I would start with, that.
Okay. I 100% agree with you guys. Setup's going to be the first thing. And when you guys learned how to drive a car, did your parents take you on I-95? No, they took you to a parking
started with
lot.
a hang or something.
No, not necessarily. You could, but not necessarily. If we're gonna work on her setup, I want her to work off the floor. And I know she snatched before. Right? It's not day one. If it was day one, then yeah, maybe. But like if we're gonna work on the setup, I want her to set up on the floor. Like that's gonna be training too. And if the setup's tight, it's also gonna be mobility work. Like that's how I feel when I work my setup. So I think we can keep it off the floor, but the driving statement, right? We didn't learn how to drive on I-95. Where did we learn how to drive? In a parking lot first, right? And maybe there were some cones and we got behind the car and we just like idled around and maybe we slightly touched the gas and it was this slow speed. We never went over 15 miles an hour, right? And then eventually we went on a neighborhood road and then eventually, commercial boulevard and then eventually I-95. That's how I would approach this snatch, right? In any Olympic lifting when it comes to people going too fast. Beyond, a more novice lifter, even our people in the gym that have been lifting for sometimes 8-10 years, we're still at best low intermediate compared to the world of Olympic lifting. So the more speed we put on things, the more likely we're going to have breakdown as well. So for sure, work on the setup, right? And we don't have to go through the whole checklist. We know what we want to see. Justin, you may be able to answer this. It looks like Tanisha has some tight hips, right? And that may be kind of uncomfortable. No, not really.
No.
Okay,
She's
so it
not-
may just be more like neurological connection and like space and time.
I guess
Let's
that's
see.
why I said like a hang and not like a high hang, but like a hang from the knees to
Below
try
the
to
knee.
fix her back so she can like feel how her back like start like deadlift and then try a good morning to fix her back and then go from there.
Okay, so it would work. Let me rephrase why, like what I said earlier, that would work, right? And we know there's a couple ways to skin a cat. I see where your mind is, like get tall, get the shoulders back, and then take your time with the hinge to like create. I like that. That could work for sure.
Actually, Nate, can I jump in? You mentioned this
Go
a
ahead.
couple of classes ago about starting like your starting position, your finishing position. So yeah, like Diana said, I would start with what is it supposed to feel like, physically put her in the right position, open the knees, a little bit better stance. That's how we start. That's what I would start with.
I don't disagree with you guys. I think that would be fine. I think open the stance for sure. If you are going to start on the floor, that's why I was thinking she had maybe tight hips. So the stance very slightly open, but also not egregiously, very slightly pointing the toes can help people too get into position. Just saying her hips aren't very tight, but when you do have a very tight athlete, having that little tiny bow out can definitely help. You could technically do both things that I'm saying and y'all are saying. Have her start, hold the bottom positions for like a 1,000, 2 1,000, and then just deadlift it up. So it's like we don't waste the deadlift and then have her do like the hang like y'all are talking about. To the speed analogy, right? She's quick. Like let's play that through. Watch how fast she moves.
Yeah, like that first pull should definitely be slower.
Whoa, go, right? Yeah, I would have, and not just her, I would say probably I walk through this room and there's 10 people, I would say there's probably at least 5 of them that need to do this, taking the time, and it's when that takeoff happens, it's slow. And then right here, when we're starting to get like mid-thigh, let them go fast. Oh, shit, I won't wait too fast. Let them go fast there. And the reason I do that is it is going to reinforce one, the bottom position is not getting any power from anyway. So for niche and the knee, all we have to lose is this position. We're not going to be able to get that bar overhead. But if I make them move slow, it's going to keep them in position. And then to you guys' point, really getting used to the positions and what those feel like and staying there. If I don't let someone move fast, they're only going to get stronger and more comfortable in them as well. So yeah, I'm with you guys with the hang, but let's set up, let's execute a really nice setup and deadlift, and then go ahead, hit the snatches from ahead. I think the degree of hang just depends on, you know, where she's at as far as her position goes. So it may start with just shoulders back and down, get real rigid in a high hang, because that's going to be the easiest. And then like a mid thigh and knee. And then eventually I love 1 inch below the knee hangs. Those are really challenging because you have to have some patience in clearing the knees before, you know, you shoot up. So that would be like the last stage if you were gonna progress it. What's something else y'all could do that we didn't talk about that could be really beneficial as well?
Maybe widen her grip.
Did I just leave off? Sorry. Maybe. Hard to tell. Totally.
My first thought is
I would say widen the grip because you see how she's bending the elbows and she like obviously can extend more, obviously can have more patience, all of these things.
Obviously,
But
she's
yeah, I think
closer too.
I do think you're right with maybe widening the grip a bit. Go ahead, Justin. What were you gonna say?
well, I know her deadlift is good. Like she keeps a good form in her deadlift. And so I would probably just keep working her with a snatch hand position deadlift until she gets that pretty much ingrained and then move on to the next section of the pool.
And it does look to me like she probably does have a better deadlift than like front squat because like you can see the hips are what really want to start the movement on that and they kind of shoot up. So she has a good deadlift. She's got the skills. We know she's got the neurological skills there, you know, too. And yeah, it would just be snatch grip. And it is a little different, right? The hips need to drop a hair lower because our hands are wider, our range of motion is different. I think it just slow things down. Like I think it like what does it come down to for our entire theme of talking about this movement is slow down a little bit. What's another tool though? So let's say we did want to work a hang and maybe that wasn't working, or let's say it was tight hips and it was a range of motion thing. What's something else you can do for somebody to give them some help to hit the right position and get into a nice setup without having to deadlift, hang, and get all that right?
maybe in the warm up.
In the water.
Oh, and
We do it all the time for older people. Putting a riser, like a box, right?
yeah.
Maybe I have like a couple 45-pound plates on the ground and I have the bar set there. That's gonna be a lot easier of a position for someone to get into a good setup on and then go. You know, we use that all the time. That's why I brought up range of motion. When we have someone that can't stay in a good position in that full range of motion, you know, we've got a guy that comes into our 9 a.m. and I think he's low 80s, but he's a badass. Like he goes in the bar and does like L-sits before class. He tries to do all that stuff. Like he's very determined. But for him and like his safety of a position, like him on like a 3-inch riser makes all the difference in his setup, and it looks so much better. So yeah, don't be afraid to use that. And you don't have to get boxes out. Just get a couple plates, stack a couple plates on the ground for people when they are having that position and go. The other thing is that you just have to be careful with is that person's probably not going to be doing this crazy heavy snatch because they need help, right? And they're working on skills, so the bar is going to be light. But making sure people don't get too crazy and are trying to do like a 1 rep max where they're going to be failing and dropping the bar, and they have those plates on the floor or boxing floors, and you get weird bounces, and that can be a whole nother issue. So that would be staying lighter, really working on position and movement, and you know, making sure they're not going to be failing reps. Deadlift's different because that's way easier. Like they're not barbell over the head. So yeah, risers, use them. They're a good tool. Just like we would use a squat, med ball, or a box for range of motion on squat. We can cut range of motion on deadlift too if we need to. Sweet. It's like 12:05. You guys have anything before we call it day? You guys can call it a day. Thanks for those videos. Those are all good ones.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. I'm Cayman. I'll get your bar muscle up next week.
Bye.
See y'all.